Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jasmine. I lead the creative agency trusted by hundreds of female founders that we have helped generate over $50 million in revenue. In today's video, I'm discussing the top thing that should be a priority for you if you are someone who's creating content for your business as a female founder or creating content for your campaigns going into the new year. And so let's start off with talking about how to come up with your own content design style, how to come up with your signature aesthetic. Right now, what we are seeing the most of is so many different content types. And the ones that you are following and loving the most are the ones that have something unique about them. Think about a distinct signature content design style that you see and you immediately know this is for that influencer, this is for this creator, this is for this business, simply because not just how they're showing up, but how they're also deciding all of those little elements that go into making the content aesthetic. Not just with video editing styles and cuts and angles, but also thinking about content design styles with font pairings and colors. Right now, if you're just utilizing your brand assets, that's kind of the bare minimum. So also thinking about how to come up with creative ideas to take your content from basic to a little bit more creative, a little bit more aesthetic, and of course, signature to you as a female founder. So in this video, we're going to talk about your own creative direction, how to study visual references that you see and how you can take away what you love from them in a way that's ethical. How do you actually put it together into design systems that you can utilize? How do you know what fonts to choose, what brand colors to choose, what to put on your Pinterest board? All of that is what we're discussing. And of course, once you've created this, the next step is actually putting it into a campaign. I have a campaign crash course linked for you in the description. That's a 60-minute guide helping you figure out how to sell out your next campaign like a celebrity brand. So let's start off with like your overall creative direction and deciding what direction do you even want to take with your content design style moving forward. Before you get into Pinterest, before you go and seek some inspiration, I want you to think of like 3 key words that you want your audience to think of when they first land on your profile. Is it sleek? Is it quirky? Is it playful? Is it editorial? Is it bright and bold? Even the word bold can mean so many things to so many different people. Minimalistic can mean so many things to so many people. Playful can mean so many things to so many people. So not just thinking about those words, but thinking about what those words mean to you and how do you want to define them in your brand and how do you want to define them in your content. For example, I have a lot of clients that say they want a playful and approachable brand, but they don't want bold colors and rainbow all over the place. So thinking about, okay, how are we going to pair the right colors and how are we going to make their content seem approachable or their photo shoot seem welcoming? How do we want to style them? Those are all things that go into how we want to define that word for them. Next, I want you to think about your audience and what is the perception that you want to hold in their mind. Think about when someone first lands on your page, what are things you want them to think? It could be things like this content is so valuable, but it could also be something like her page is so cohesive. I love how she does blank in this way. So fill out those gaps and maybe even go back and see what have people told me about the content I'm already creating, which brings me to the third part on like reflect back on what you've already posted. What feels true to you? What feels like you could have done better at? What feels like something you don't want anything to do with? And so reflecting back on even what you've been doing and how close to that you are will help you dictate your starting point. So the overall approach I want you to take with this kind of creative direction piece of figuring out your content design style is if someone were to go onto your profile and think of it like a store, think of it like a house, think of it like a party, what are all of the elements that you would want them to pick up on? How do you want them to feel? How do you want their perception to be? What words would you use to describe your own profile? And how do you want to define those words in your own way and in a way that makes sense for your brand? For example, for my account, I always reference like the magazine look. I want big typography. I want content that's culturally relevant. I want content that's helpful and valuable. I want high quality images. I want black and white with like pops of red. Those were all things that I decided based on what my idea of if I had a magazine, what would that look like? And that was what worked for me. The next part is actually collecting the inspiration that you're looking for in an ethical way without copying creators or without doing something exactly like this one influencer that you love. The problem when you copy another creator or an influencer, as you know, it's no longer signature to you. That means instead of being recognized and memorable as yourself, you then become a reference point, which means people will say, oh, I know her, she does content like blank. And that other brand or that other creator or that other influencer is essentially the one getting the recognition instead of you creating your own thing. So the best way to do this is if you find a piece of content that you love, ask yourself, do you like the strategy and the topic, or do you like the visuals of it? Not both. When you do both, that's you copying the content exactly as it is. So deciding if you love the visual elements, like the editing, like the styling, maybe the font pairings, right, is completely different than you deciding, oh, I like this topic and I want to recreate this topic in my own way. So making sure that you're only picking one not both. I also want you to feel comfortable collecting inspiration from all sorts of niches, not just ones directly to you. Some of my most successful clients that work with us inside of our sales studio offer are able to create such engaging content because they pull inspiration from other industries. They're not just looking at what is someone else doing that works in my niche. They're not looking at what are my competitors doing. They're looking at completely different creators. They're looking at fashion brands. They're looking at e-commerce brands that have nothing to do with what they're currently doing. And that gives them a way to not think about something from scratch, but say, okay, if this is currently trending in this industry, how do I want to make it relevant to me and my niche? How do I want to bring this to what I'm doing and give it my own creative spin? That way you're not just following a trend, you're actually creating one yourself and you're being an industry leader. I also want you to make note of how you're feeling when you're looking at these visuals. So for example, some people think that high-end luxury visuals means that it's repelling, it's not welcoming, it's standoffish, but it all depends on the delivery and the choices made. So you could see a high-produced, high-end video, you could see someone that's polished and put together and dressed well, right? And you still feel warmed up to them. You still feel welcomed by them. You still are interested in what they have to say because of how they're showing up. So I don't want you to immediately say, oh, I don't want to look luxurious or high-end because I don't want to repel people. Instead, I want you to think about, oh, I do want to look luxurious and high-end, but how can I do that in a way that best suits me and my audience? Once you start collecting this inspiration, you'll be able to start recognizing patterns that then you can start going on Pinterest and looking for. And so when you go on Pinterest and start looking for your inspiration, don't only look at kind of the big dream inspiration that doesn't feel like something you can replicate on a day-to-day basis. A good example, and I'll give you a styling analogy here. When I was originally kind of searching for styling inspo for the season, I went on Pinterest and started looking up all of these pins that sounded great, but everything was just way too dressy for me. I noticed every single pin had like 5-inch high heels, and I am someone that works from home. I love to run my errands. I do love a dressy moment, but high heels are not something that are sustainable for me in a day-to-day basis. And so it's also making sure that in this case, when you are pulling things to create your own mood board, whether it's photo shoot inspiration, whether it's content design ideas, whether it's video styling ideas, and kind of creating your own thing, it's important that you're noting, okay, is this something that I'm actually capable of doing? So if you're finding inspiration from a thought leader, an online business owner, or a brand that you love, but they are filming in a high production studio, ask yourself, how can I recreate this at home? How can I recreate this in my home office? How can I change my interior design style in a maybe low budget way, in a way that works for me? And I always say the more pins that you add, the better. Once you add your pins filled with content ideas and design ideas, you'll be able to see, oh, there's a lot of white space here. There are these types of images where these are the poses involved. These are the color schemes that I'm like seeing, or background options. These are kind of design styles that I'm seeing like that are trending. And I want you to make note on these patterns. If you're seeing the color red pop up frequently, if you're seeing a certain type of text pop up frequently, make note of these patterns, because this will help you in the final stage of actually putting together the design style that you want to go with. So when you start off with design style, the first thing I want you to think of is the actual fonts. You want to make sure that the fonts aren't just pretty, but they're also legible and are actually workable in several different formats. So not just thinking, oh, I can see this really well on a big computer screen, but also if it's on a post on my phone, are people going to want to easily read this? So thinking about two fonts, like a header and a body style font that you can use interchangeably, but also thinking about what would be on brand for you to use as an accent font. So maybe you have these two fonts that you use all of the time, but maybe you want to be a little bit more playful sometimes, a little bit more literal. So maybe when you have like a journal or diary style entry post, you want to use something handwritten. And so thinking about what would a handwritten font kind of look like in this specific example. Same thing if you want to do something fun and out there or a little bit more editorial, thinking about, okay, what font can I pair with my existing selections that can also still be on brand for me? That way you're creating something that's flexible. I think the biggest thing about creating a signature design style going into 2026 is people don't want a rigid brand that feels very corporate. They want to have the flexibility to add a font here and there when it's appropriate, play with some new colors, but in a way that still feels on brand. So for you to be able to do that, you're already, again, leading the conversation and you're creating something signature to you and people will start recognizing as your own, to the point where you can start making new design decisions like certain colors or certain photos or certain font pairings, and people will still tie it back to you because they understand your brand so well. I feel like Rhode does such a good job of this, of every time they drop a campaign, they kind of change their design style, but even when they use a new color, even though they use a new video editing style reel or a new graphic style post, you can still translate it back to the brand because we understand the brand so well. The next thing I want you to think about is 3 groupings of colors. So we want your base colors, we want your accent colors, and we want a set of colors to act as a neutral. Even if you want a super colorful brand, you still want about 1 or 2 colors to act as a neutral so that when you're pairing everything together, it's legible, it's seamless, it doesn't scream rainbow, okay? So starting off with your base colors, these are colors that you're going to be recognized for. I usually do 1 to 3. If you can stick to 1 to 2, that's even better. But these are the colors that when someone sees that specific shade of red or that specific shade of purple or pink, or maybe it's just black and white, right? They're gonna tie it back to you. Then you have your accent colors, and those are colors that pair well with your main color. Those are colors that you can also mix and match to kind of create that variation in your content design style without feeling like every post is either black or white. You want, again, to create that kind of design flexibility for yourself. And accent colors are where things can get interesting because when you're running a specific campaign and want to include like an exclusive element or something to tie in the theme together, you want to make sure that that main color pairs well with the base colors that you have and even with the neutrals if possible. I'm thinking about Rhode's summer campaign for their like lemon teeny kind of lip peptide. They infused this gorgeous yellow color that did so well with pairing with their kind of like bluish gray and their white. That became a signature during their entire campaign to where that color became recognizable and adjacent to her existing colors, especially when we think about how they use that color to bring different content design pieces to life. The next thing I want you to think about is photo shoots. So with photo shoots, I want you to not only think about the actual style of shoot you want to utilize. For example, I always love being on an actual set. I love using a lot of negative space. I love being able to like overlap the text. And so not just thinking about that, but also thinking about the photo editing style. Do you want something that's more vintage, more kind of neutral, more grainy, more cinematic? The more that you can actually do this, you will actually be able to replicate it in real life as well. So for example, when I'm trying to capture like lo-fi content, and I have a whole separate video about this, but if I'm trying to do that in a way that's still on brand and curated, what I'll do is actually try to make my photos look more neutral so that they pair very well with my curated photography decisions. So sometimes it's also thinking about what are signature things that you like to capture and share on a day-to-day basis on social media. So that way, when you are doing your professional shoot, it doesn't seem completely jarring. Finally, this is where you can come up with like your signature approach, is how to pair everything together. So this is going to take some experimentation, but this is where you can sit down and play with things so that you can see how everything comes together before making any final decision. So for example, something signature to you could be not only how you pair certain colors, but maybe different backgrounds you can use, different icons, different patterns. I also want you to look back on your Pinterest board and decide, okay, I'm seeing a lot of negative space, but I'm seeing oversized text. Am I able to blend those two signature things and make it my own? I think also from there, you can decide, okay, what are some content design trends that I can partake in that fit my brand and I can make my own? For example, right now, there's a big trend right now with kind of like a scrapbooking style that's a little bit more maximalist, or even this kind of like iOS-based style where everything is very digitalized. And so for me, a way that looks on brand for me is I'm not necessarily using like a scrapbook approach, but I love the idea of being able to layer different like magazine style briefs. So I did like folders, paperwork, clips, and things like that in order for me to make it look on brand, right? And so that's how I basically took the trend and made it my own so that it's still tied to my signature. And of course, as I mentioned, if you want to tie all of this together and figure out how to make it even more exclusive for your upcoming campaign, be sure to get our campaign crash course. The link is in the description.